Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Lord, thanks so much for your day. Pray that we'll not have any more technical problems today, and bless our time together in Jesus' name, amen. Well, we're a little bit late getting started just because everything was working and then nothing was working. So today I titled this, Would You Still Like to Play a Game of Chess? I used this many years ago, sort of a takeoff on the War Games movie from back in when I was much younger. And I saw a picture of one of the actress who played the lead, and she's aging. I mean, she's getting old, like a lot of us. But remember the premise of that was they wanted to play a war game. And they wanted the way they figured out to fool the computer was they played tic-tac-toe, which if you play it the right way, there's nobody that can ever win that. But they started off playing chess. So we see a lot of these analogies, things like there's a famous video out there of Putin playing chess, geopolitical chess. And what he does is, people make a move and he knocks their things off the board, and then he picks up their piece and he eats it and that type of thing. I think it's a great, great video. But this is sort of the world that we live in. So let's just look at a few things. So for Hope for Our Times last Sunday, I'm going to build a little bit on what I talked about in that particular update, just because the way they're set up, I couldn't use any graphics or anything like that. So I'm not sure that people really just want to see a John Haller talking head for 45 minutes. But we talk a lot about this ACLU grid that I sort of put together probably 3 years ago now, almost 3 years ago, for the Last Days Bible Conference in Canada. Acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. Things are going to happen much more quickly as we get closer to the end. And I think we're really at that point. Then convergence, that's important. All they're going to be happening at the same time. Logistics, I think that's important too, particularly when we look at certain prophetic ideas about what's this final Babylon like? Is it real? Where is it located? How does it operate? Is it virtual? I mean, with the computer technology and things that we're seeing, it could be that. But then also there are many wars of the end times. And so that's a question that I've had for a long time, is when we talk about Ezekiel 38 and 39, which I think this Ezekiel 38 and 39 is in this last period before the Lord's return. There are some people who think, by the way, Ezekiel 38, 39 only happens at the end after the millennium. I disagree with that. I think that will be a recapitulation and a final fulfillment of that. But, that's something I don't think we need to argue and fight over. It certainly seems like everything is lining up for Ezekiel 38 and 39 in many respects, except that there seem to be some pieces that need to fall in place yet. I think we're seeing that on a fairly significant basis, but I don't think we're there yet. For example, it talks in Ezekiel 38, 39 about a great company and a mighty army. So right now, do we have mighty armies? We certainly have a lot of armies. We have a lot of personnel. And what did Ezekiel mean when he talked about a great company and a mighty army? What did he mean when he said they shall come up like a cloud? Does that mean a drone swarm would satisfy that cloud? I personally think that some of those things are coming together. And if Russia is coming down out of the north, right now Russia, I think by most reasonable estimates, unless you talk to somebody who's just totally sold out pro-Russian, Russia didn't do as well as they thought in the war in Ukraine. They're going to win, I think. I mean, they've already won. It's just a question now of working out a peace agreement, because there's nobody in the West that wants to hang in there and continue to supply arms and maybe even personnel to Ukraine for the next number of years. That's just not going to happen. And right now, I think there's a good assessment that says that the war in Ukraine could have been avoided. And we have hundreds of thousands of people who've lost their lives. We've had millions of people that have been displaced in Ukraine. And by the way, when people were displaced in Ukraine, how many protests were there around the world marching on capitals, complaining about the millions and millions of people, many more millions of people displaced than we've seen in Gaza this far in the last 7 weeks. I just think that, so that all wraps up in the logistics part. And then there's this understanding as we get closer, as it says in Daniel 11 and 12, we'll have a better understanding and we'll be able to, I think we will get to the point where we will be able to say, this is that which was prophesied. I think we're able to say that some of the things that we see coming together are the things that have been prophesied, but I don't think we're there to say this is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy yet. So, and people will disagree with me, like Ezekiel 36, one of my favorite passages, it talks that the people of the Jews, the people of Israel will be brought back into the land from the nations to which they've been dispersed. And they're brought back, by the way, not because they deserve it. This is one of the problems that I have with replacement theology. And a lot of people say statements like, well, I support Israel. Well, I support the God of Israel, and it's like, okay, so you're much better than everybody else. But the fact that, and then they say, well, the land promises were conditional, but I don't know how you can read Ezekiel 36, where it says the mountains of Israel, the land, I will bring you back into the land, and spiritualize that away. It seems to me to be a very clear end time prophecy involving a nation. And I've said this before, I don't see how a lot of the prophecies that we read about in the New Testament and the Old Testament, Zechariah, Ezekiel, Daniel, make sense without a nation of Israel. They just don't make sense. Now, that doesn't mean, and again, I'll say reiterate what I said the last 3 weeks ago, is it's easy to get to the place where if you support Israel, that you turn Israel into an idol, and you just think everything Israel does is great. I don't think everything that Israel does is great. I don't think everything that America does is great. I don't think everything America has done in its existence has been evil. That's the narrative, though, among a lot of universities, that we're colonialists and we uprooted the indigent people. Somebody, I don't know if they were criticizing me or not. Let's just pretend that they were criticizing me about that. Oh, well, you don't really believe in Romans 13, do you? Because the people in the American Revolution, they sinned and violated Romans 13 when they engaged in the revolution against the English crown. Now, we can have an argument about that, and I'm willing to have an argument about that. But listen, don't get your little self-righteous hobby horse about the American Revolution, okay? Because how did the British crown come into being? I mean, didn't they invade a country? I mean, didn't William the Conqueror come into England? Invade. So where do you cut things off? So I think we need to maybe talk about a little bit deeper understanding. So these are the things that are going on. This is, again, the Economist magazine's The World Ahead 2024, and I appreciate a lot of the comments that people had. Some of the building blocks and things that I see that I was having trouble understanding. Somebody said, well, that's just blockchain. And I think that's probably correct. We have the line of eclipses here that go across, and there is a major eclipse in the United States next week. There was just one within the last 7-8 weeks. There'll be a bunch of elections in 2024, not the least of which is here in the United States. I think in the UK, they're going to have an election. You see the conflicts between Biden and Xi down here, and you see the areas of conflict. You see South America, I think that's an area of conflict between the U.S. and China, particularly the Panama Canal. Although my understanding is the Panama Canal right now is having major problems getting enough water for ships to be able to transit. They've had to cut back on how much cargo the ship has, because as more cargo, the ship will ride lower in the water. They don't have enough water. It's a lack of fresh water. It's not a sea level canal like the Suez Canal is. It's largely reliant on fresh water once you get past the first lock or two. And you need fresh water, and they're in a major drought in Panama right now. So there are ships, they're stacked up there. It's affecting world trade. They've adopted a process by which a ship can jump the line by paying a fee. And last week, a ship paid $4 million just to get to the head of the line, rather than sitting out there. So and you don't really hear a lot about this in the media because everybody's distracted by the war in Gaza. That's the problem. But you see other things here on this World in 2024. You see the Neuralink there in the middle left below the eclipse line. And that's coming. I am continually getting information, publications about all the stuff that's going on with AI and how it relates to human health and that sort of thing. And that's developing very quickly. Then on the right, we see what appear to be the markets going down. There are a lot of turmoil there. So there's a lot of things and I think this Economist cover does sort of pick up, and the hourglass at the top is indicative of the fact that we appear to be running out of time. But the other thing is this other Economist cover talked about the biggest problem facing the world right now is the potential reelection of Donald Trump. And they talk about it in this magazine, and I'll talk more about that in the future. But there are very populist-leaning people that are being elected, and it's driving some people into complete meltdown. This week, there was an election in Argentina, a populist who, I don't know if he claims to be a Christian or not. He studies Jewish Kabbalah. He has a rabbi. He was elected in the Argentine elections. And people are saying, and he said, I want to put Argentina on the dollar. I want to get off of this BRICS thing that we've been involved with. So we'll have to see how that happens. And then this is also out of today's, recent Times of the UK. Geert Wilders has been elected. He will have the ability to form a coalition in the Netherlands parliament. And he came out, he was very clear that, listen, we cannot allow any more Islamic people into our country. That's the problem. By the way, while this is going on, I don't know if you've seen, Russia has supposedly these great no-go zones in its country where they're very strict about everything, but it just seems amazingly now there's people in warm coats and shoes walking across the borders, and they're all Muslim, and they're walking into Finland. And so this is what General Breedlove, who was the head of NATO, Supreme Commander of NATO for a while, testified at Congress, said this is what happened. It appears that what they did was they bombed certain areas in Syria to get the Sunnis out and get them on the road to become someone else's problem. And this is continuing. We see massive amounts of immigration. It's not just here in the United States. It's into Europe. Italy is being crushed. The UK is being crushed. Netherlands has been crushed. Germany has been crushed. France has been crushed. And all of these are a problem. Now, what was interesting this week was that there was a stabbing that took place in Dublin at a school by an Algerian. And they've been very coy about the way they did this. Now, mind you, Ireland has been very anti-Israel in the way they've approached things recently. They're not in favor of Israel at all. Oh, Israel, you need to learn how to deal with that problem. What did it take to change? So Israel had 1,200 people slaughtered by Islamic militants, terrorists, in southern Israel 7 weeks ago. And Ireland's been very those Israelis, they need to back off. They shouldn't go in there with such great force. Why it's just the carnage, it's genocide, all this. And what happened? I don't believe anybody was killed in the stabbings that occurred at a school in Dublin, Ireland. They took one stabbing in Ireland and riots and demonstrations in the streets. So it's, I don't enjoy riots. I enjoy watching people's hypocrisy being exposed so quickly. So why are you now? So you can fight this now? And they're having major demonstrations there. And of course, what happens with the people in charge? They come out like, well, you far-right people, you need to calm down and not protest this. So what are they doing? Well, they must read The Economist because The Economist is a magazine that sort of gives people global elite. Now, one of the other things that's coming is digital ID, digital currency. I don't have a lot on that today, but here is a little video clip recently of Christine Lagarde. She's the head of I can't remember if she's head of the IMF or the European Central Bank. Here's what she had to say.
The digital euro is on the move. Yesterday, the Governing Council of the ECB approved the opening of the preparation phase. It will be a journey, and we will walk the journey together with the legislator. All European institutions will be involved to make sure that Europe is equipped with the currency of the future. Cash is here to stay. You will have all options, cash and digital cash. So what does it mean for you? For consumers, it would be free and easy to use everywhere in the euro area. All of that, of course, is subject to the legislative process. Cash or digital, the choice will be yours. Your euro, your choice.
I don't believe her. Okay, so she had the European Central Bank. Now, there was this little, with the artificial intelligence thing, a rather crazy, weird series of events at OpenAI. OpenAI is one of the leading digital artificial intelligence, trying to develop AGI, artificial general intelligence. And the goal is to get computers that are going to be more intelligent than humans. And so Sam Altman is one of the founders of OpenAI, along with Elon Musk. Elon Musk left a few years ago because he thought that OpenAI was becoming too commercialized. Of course, now Elon Musk has rolled out his own platform called X.AI. You should go look it up because it's sort of based on this book called A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe and this thing called Grok, G-R-O-K. I won't go into it here. I'll talk more about it at some point in the future. But here, OpenAI, their board was people who were described as altruistic. We don't want to be too commercial in the development of artificial intelligence. They got concerned with Sam Altman. Now, there's a lot of different rumors running around about Altman. They say, well, maybe he was too focused on other things, and he is involved in other things. In fact, it says, and so they fired him. Then Microsoft got involved. Then Sam Altman went to Microsoft, which has invested about $13 billion into OpenAI. They're probably the biggest investor. Then, lo and behold, some new board members got appointed, one of them being Larry Summers. He used to be at Harvard, Secretary of the Treasury. under the first or second Obama terms. I don't think he's been involved in the third term yet. I mean, sorry, the first Biden term, but wink, wink. But so here's this. This is from Wired. Sam Altman's second coming sparks new fears of the AI apocalypse. That's from Wired magazine. Remember, it was years ago, Wired magazine put out that article about the social credit score. Great graphics in that magazine. That time, I've used them in some of my talks. And they were concerned about where social credit was going to go. So just look at what this says here. OpenAI's new boss is the same as the old boss, but the company and the artificial intelligence industry may have been profoundly changed by the past 5 days of high-stakes soap opera. Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, co-founder, and figurehead, was removed by the board of directors on Friday. By Tuesday night, after a mass protest by the majority of the startup staff, and it wasn't just a majority, it was like 700 out of 770 signed a letter. Altman was on his way back, and most of the existing board was gone. But that board, mostly independent of OpenAI's operations, bound to a for the good of the humanity mission statement, was critical to the company's uniqueness. And so now the question is, where is this thing going to go? We've really reached a point of no return. And you see all these countries, you see the EU, you see the US, and we're going to regulate this, and nobody's doing anything. As in the meantime, OpenAI is full speed ahead. It was a year ago that ChatGPT was rolled out. I think it was November 30th of 2022. And within a week, they had 1 million downloads of ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is baby stuff compared to what they're working on. And Musk came out with X.AI, said this is way beyond anything we've had so far. And there is some thinking that some articles suggested that when Altman was fired at OpenAI, it was because there were some things, people within the company, that were concerned about a recent development where it went way beyond anything that they thought they could control. It's also true that at the company, there are these, it's almost like a religious cult within the company at OpenAI. And they've got some real weirdos working on this, which is very comforting that they're going to be developing something that everybody says is a existential threat to humanity. This thing has end time stuff written all over it. So this is a graphic that I found about AI. I think it might be true. It's often referred to as the Oppenheimer moment of our generation. Oppenheimer was the guy who developed the nuclear bomb. This is blockchain technology. Computers are developing very quickly. This is in the Times UK. AI Angel or Digital Devil, decoding Sam Altman. And then this morning, in this morning's New York Times, is, I think, by Ezra Klein, who I think writes some pretty thoughtful articles on technology, privacy, problems, where this is going. He wrote an article last year when ChatGPT was getting going, and remember they came out with a letter and said, oh, we need to slow down, we need to stop this where it is right now, not go any further. He said at that time in one of his articles that it seems like there's almost demons involved in this whole thing. Now, maybe there are real demons. I don't know. I haven't seen any yet, but it could be. But there's also this mysterious thing, is mainly because this thing seems to be working and nobody really knows exactly why. It's hard to get somebody when they're interviewed. Sam Altman, Eliezer Ludkowski, all the people involved in this, there's sort of a mysterious thing. Is like, well, we're not really sure what's going on, but it seems to be working. But then I think the article, the op-ed that Ezra Klein wrote in today's New York Times is pretty good, is what do you do when it's only an on switch? There's no off switch. Elon Musk can go in interviews and say, well, I think will be able to put a kill switch in a robot before it kills you. I think. Now that, by the way, the way he said that connotes some kind of uncertainty. You can say, I think that that's true. That's not uncertain. I had a legal case once about that. I made a very clever argument, and the court quoted from it word for word, but that's neither here nor there. That was like one of the best days of my life when I read that opinion. I got a reversal. So we don't know. I mean, the lesson of the OpenAI mess is still here. Now, the other thing that's going on, and you need to watch this, is what's developed over the last year. And this goes back a couple of years with COP26, COP27, and now COP28, and all of its related support systems that have developed around this. One of those support systems is a thing that King Charles III of England developed while he was Prince Charles called Terra Carta, which is a play on, in fact, it was like 5 years ago today, I was at the British Library, and I saw the original Magna Carta, one of the great documents of Western civilization. Whether you agree with it or not, it was very important. I think, what was it, 1200s it came out? Very important document. By the way, at the British Museum, the case across the aisle had the works of Michael Palin from Monty Python. I thought it was kind of an interesting juxtaposition, like Western civilization, and then right next to that was original papers of the Beatles. So you had the Magna Carta, original King James Bible, Monty Python, and the Beatles. And it was like all kind of in the same room. And I just thought that was just kind of a very British way of organizing the world. But one of the things that's come up with this COP28, which starts on November 30th, it starts on Thursday, I think you want to pay attention to it. I'm sure it'll be live streamed. King Charles will be speaking remotely. I think Bill Gates is speaking. I think Pope Francis will be speaking. And it's this big environmental push. Now, one of the things that they've done over the last 2 years is they had this thing called Goals House, is a diverse community of business and political leaders, activists, NGOs, and entrepreneurs to work on climate change. And they've had a series of things over the last year. They went to Davos early 2023, and they had a series of meetings. Then they went to Cannes in June. Then they went to also the London Climate Action Week. Then in September, they had a significant number of meetings at the UN General Assembly, and then they'll go to COP28 in Dubai starting on November 30th. They also had Munich, they had Austin, they had DC. I had a colored slide behind that. They shouldn't be these little black dots, but just goes to show you that my editor got up a little bit late this morning and didn't get things done. But also, this is this thing. Look at this. This is the road to COP28. Up here, the title, We Don't Have Time. So this is a big push to get control of the elites and the globalists. And then look at the companies that they have involved in this. If you could zoom out, We Don't Have Time. The Clinton Global Initiative, they have our best interests at heart. You just don't realize that. UN, Exponential Roadmap, Ericsson, the Nest Climate Campus. So this is a big thing that everybody's getting on board with, and you need to watch this week. I have some friends who think that, what's going on in the climate thing is the covenant that's referred to in Daniel 9, the covenant with many. I have some that reject that. I have some that say that it's this. I have some that say it's something else. I personally am sort of taking a wait and see attitude. Okay, so but I do think that we cannot dismiss the significance of the meetings that are going to be taking place in Dubai this week. By the way, that was for the UN General Assembly. That's the skyline of New York, because I recognize the Chrysler Building, and my wife she'll get that joke. That's a John Haller and John and Pam Haller joke. Well, let's go to the Middle East and talk about this for a few minutes. This is Benjamin Netanyahu talking about the operative goals, the things that they're doing in Gaza, some of the things that they've accomplished, the ceasefire, the pause for 4 days to get some of the hostages. There are a lot of people in Israel that are very upset about that. There are others that are supportive of it. There are people that are upset about it. And of course, when they say they're upset about it, then says, well, what if your kid was involved in one of them? And it becomes very personal. But I'll share you some very good thoughts from Jonathan Spire in a moment. So I think that this thing is going to be very difficult to manage. I have some other things about the hostages that have been released, and we just need to watch this. So this is a map that I found at the Institute for Study of War. If you go to their landing page, I think it's understandingwar.org or .com, and they have like these different pages that automatically show up, and one of them is the War in Gaza operational maps. I think it's pretty good. Shows you some of the things going on, the major players, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. They don't have Egypt color in, but Israel, Gaza, and some of the things that are going on. And the map is pretty significant. And so this is the operational map for Gaza. One of the things that you see is the striped area. That's the area of Gaza the area near Gaza that's been evacuated. So between there and the north, and I'll show you that map in just a minute, there are about 200,000 Israelis that don't live where they lived 7 weeks ago. This is having a major economic impact. They have to move. They have businesses down here in this area. There's kibbutzes, there's agriculture. I have friends that live in Israel that have volunteered to go down there to harvest crops that are ripe and ready to be harvested. And they don't have enough people to do it. So that causes agricultural issues, price increases, housing problems. Some of these people are over by the Dead Sea or a lot in resort hotels. Some have moved up to the Jerusalem area. This is the Lebanon border area. You see the blue area there is the Sea of Galilee. The green is Lebanon. The red is Syria. The striped area here between Syria and Israel is the Golan Heights. And then along the border, you see those very dense crisscross. Those are evacuated areas, although I believe that Kiryat Shimona has largely been evacuated also. So there's maybe 80,000 people in the north that have been evacuated further south. You see Nahariya is still there, but it's very close. I mean, I think we had friends in Nahariya that we visited when we were there, and I think it's like 6 minutes drive to the Lebanon border from where they are. And the Lebanon border there, it's a place called Rosh HaNikra, still a disputed area. This is sort of the border that came into being after the Second Lebanon War in 2006. And there have been a lot of missiles fired by Hezbollah into Israel. They shot a couple recently that took out a base. I did ask somebody in Israel, a journalist in Israel that I trust immensely. I won't quote him because I don't want him to be embarrassed that he knows me or something. I don't know. But very, very intelligent, one of the best analysts in the Middle East, and you should follow him. But he said, well, I don't know, the base was pretty much empty. So this is what's been going on. So we're being attacked, the U.S. troops in Syria, northeastern Syria. There have been 69, 70 attacks. And we will respond. We will bomb an empty storage building to show Iran that we mean business. But Hezbollah is doing the same thing. So they're trying to do things. They're trying to show we're here, we're watching, we're ready to go. This is what Hezbollah is the message they're trying to convey. But we're not going to do anything that's really going to provoke you. So it's this game of cat and mouse. But back here in Gaza, Israel, and northern Gaza, the word is, this is a map that I overlaid that shows the destruction. The yellow are destroyed areas, the red are recently destroyed areas. Those, the estimate is the buildings in that part of Gaza are 50% destroyed. Israel has been very brutal with the way that they're going at this. Now, there's also reports, so these missiles, the rockets still continue to be launched. And there is a report that Israel was able to shoot down a rocket using Iron Beam. And if you remember, this is a video of Iron Beam and how it operates. So Iron Beam uses a laser, not a missile. It's much more efficient. You can literally shoot down a missile for dollars of electricity by shooting a laser beam at it. It heats the missile or the rocket and it knocks it down. And so this is effectively what Rafael, the company that makes this is how they sort of envision Iron Beam working. It would be deployed and it would shoot down. Now, if it shot down a rocket, that's a big advance. Because a rocket, when it shoots, it's sort of like a bullet. A bullet is spinning when it leaves. A drone is different to shoot down because it's not spinning. So if it's a rocket that's spinning or a missile that's spinning as it flies through the air, then it has to give a concentrated beam for a longer period of time in order to shoot down the missile. If it's just sitting there, that's different. But if it's flying, it's a much more difficult thing. It has a very limited range, maybe a mile to 1.5 miles at best. And so it needs to be deployed in a lot of places. But if they did shoot it down, that's a significant technological advance. So this is a big deal what's been going on in Israel with the development of technology. Now, I just put this picture up to show sort of what's happened in Gaza, in Israel. These are containers that are full of dead bodies. There's still hundreds of bodies that have not been identified. So what's happening now is hostages have been freed. I think 20-some Israeli hostages, and then Gaza has an immigrant Thai population and some Filipinos working there that were taken hostage. So they've pretty much been released. And by the way, people say, well, they don't care about them because they don't put them on posters. Yeah, they're on the posters all over the place. By the way, this thing that I see going on all over the world where they put up a picture of the hostages that Hamas took, then people, professors, lawyers, doctors, go and just tear them down. And they're confronted and they say, well, this is propaganda. So they act like it's not true. But they're releasing hostages now. So if it's not true, then why are they releasing people who were never kidnapped? Oh, it's all an Israeli ruse, and it's all the Jews are doing this. And you see these people that have the anti-Semitism is just crazy. And it's sometimes not as overt as others. For example, here's the New York Times from yesterday. 24 hostages are freed as aid heads into Gaza. Now, those were hostages coming from Gaza into Israel. So what did the New York Times do? They put up a picture, and the picture they put up was what? A lady wearing a Hamas flag. This was because the deal was they would release Palestinian prisoners, women and children. And, oh, these people are innocent. I'll show you how innocent they are in just a moment. And some of them came out. They're calling for the death of all Jews. They've been in prison in Israel because they did bad stuff. Even as children, they did bad stuff. Oh, it's harsh. And so what you see is this moral equivalency. Well, we have hostages, you have prisoners, they're hostages too. It's the exact same thing. So there were a lot of people released. Really, heartwarming videos. I'll show you one in just a moment of these different people who've been reunited with their families. They were in pretty good shape, although they said it was not, they had to sleep in plastic chairs. If they wanted to go to the bathroom, they had to knock on the door, and sometimes it'd be an hour and a half before somebody came to let them go to the bathroom. And so there's freedom for some. Women and children have been released. Some Thai men have been released, but no Israeli men, and certainly none of the Israeli soldiers, of which there are a significant number that are there. And you see these people that have been in captivity now for 49 days. They've been released. A lot of people are celebrating this. And people are making really stupid statements. People are getting fired. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. This is more about the chaos in Ireland that I talked about earlier. A knife attack outside a school acted as a trigger for a mob fueled by anti-migrant rhetoric. And so that's what they say is it's never the person who does the stabbing who's at fault. It's never Hamas who did something awful that's at fault. It's the Jews, or it's the far right. So this is what they do, is they push this narrative. Some of them were afraid, the hostages were afraid that they were going to be executed. And you see some of these just really touching things where some people were thought dead and turned out they were released, and the hostages, they didn't even know they were hostages. Here's a picture of this is a New York Times summary of some of the hostages being released. You can see that looks like those are mostly Thai workers. And it's interesting, if you watch a lot of these videos, what you'll see is that the people of Gaza were running after the vehicle, shouting and, death to the Jews and all this other stuff as these hostages were being released. And then, just like I said, some very heartwarming things. Here's a little 9-year-old boy. He had his birthday while in captivity, who was released. Sees his father. He was held with his mother. His mother was also released. Here she comes. I think also his grandmother. She was released also. This father, his wife and 2 daughters have been taken hostage, and this is their reunion.
חשבת עליי דברים טובים? כן? מה אמא אמרה עליי? חלמת שהלכתם הביתה? הנה עכשיו החלום מתגשם, אנחנו בבית, זהו, אנחנו עוד מעט הולכים לבית שלנו. עוד מעט אנחנו חוזרים לבית שלנו.
So very heartwarming. There was another, I don't have the video in my slide deck, little girl named, I think her name was Emily Hand. Her father is Irish. He had gone to Israel to work at a kibbutz. She was staying over at a friend's house, was taken hostage. It was initially believed that she had been killed. The father had actually come out and said, I'm glad that she died so she didn't have to spend time with those monsters in Gaza. Well, it turned out she was released yesterday, 8 or 9 years old, had a reunion with her father. Now, at the same time that they did that, they released prisoners, excuse me, I've been brainwashed. They released prisoners in Israeli jails of people that had been done. And so one of them was this lady. They put up her before picture. This is what she looked like before she went, a couple days before she went to Israeli prison. And they said, look at her now. This is the way she looks. But what they don't tell you is that she got burned because the car bomb that she was trying to set off exploded and burned. It didn't explode, it burned, and it burned her face. It was her own fault, but the way it's being put up on social media is, look what Israel did to this beautiful lady, how they destroyed her face. Israel did not do that. she did it. The anti-Semitism that is unbelievable. Now, I have a couple little videos that are compilations of some of the people released from Israeli prisons. I think there were 50, and there'll be more. There was another hostage release, was delayed. Israel came out and said, if we don't have these people by midnight, the ceasefire is off, and they got the people just before that, so then Israel released more people. So they're probably up around 100 prisoners released, teens and women. But here's what some of these people did. Here's a video. This lady was released, and you can see her, she's trying to stab this guy in the old city of Jerusalem, and he dealt with it, did a little street justice there. She survived it. She's been released now, but they act like she was innocent. Here's a compilation of videos. This is one of the this poor boy, he was held in prison. It was just terrible. Well, you see him running down a guy on the street with knives. That's not a good thing. I don't care if he was 12 years old when he did it. Here's another guy being chased with somebody with a knife. That might be one of the same guys. I guess that video's over. So now this is the Prime Minister of Ireland talking about the young Irish Jewish girl who was released. This is his statement. Now, what kind of moral insert pejorative word for idiot here, whatever you wanted to use. Listen to what he said. This is a day of enormous joy and relief for Emily Hand and her family. An innocent child who was lost has now been found and returned, and we breathe a massive sigh of relief. Our prayers have been answered. This man has no moral compass. She wasn't lost. She was kidnapped by terrorists and held for 7 weeks. And this is the guy, he's the Prime Minister of Ireland. It's really unbelievable. Enormous joy, but she was released. So there's a lot of turmoil in Israel right now about what happened and why did it happen. A front page article on Haaretz today, and elsewhere, even in the Jerusalem Post, articles about how did we miss this? Because we had such a great technologically secure border. This is from the Jerusalem Post magazine about electronic warfare and how they're using technology to do everything. So what happened was Hamas had planned to do this on Passover earlier this year. But they were afraid, at least this is the word that's coming out now, they were afraid that Israel had found out about it. It might respond and shut things down before they were able to accomplish anything in the operation that they wanted to do. So Israel, so they went dark. They only did things, they broke people into different cells, and then they did a pretty good job technology-wise. I played a clip of that, the Washington Post summary of that. But there's a lot of people in Israel who need to answer, why did we miss this? There were explicit warnings given over the past year before this happened, and they just seem to be ignored. Intentionally or super extra negligently, that still remains to be seen. But there's going to be a big shakeup in the IDF and the Israeli government. I think I've said I don't see how Netanyahu can survive this politically, and when this war is over or well under control, I suspect that you're going to see some big changes in the Israeli government. But listen, I'm not the first guy who would be wrong in writing a political obituary for Benjamin Netanyahu. That guy has come back from the political dead a number of times, and he may survive this. But right now I don't know anybody in Israel that thinks that he will. And then the question is, who's going to be the next leader? Because a lot of them, remember, when this thing was being planned, Naftali Bennett was the prime minister. Lapid was the foreign minister. Then Lapid became the foreign minister for a short time, a caretaker prime minister before the last elections last November. And then the government was formed and began serving in late December. I was there in early December, and they were still in the process of forming the government, having a lot of back and forth at the Knesset. The Knesset was meeting, the Knesset's formed, but the government, the executive branch, is not operating yet. So it kind of leaves them in this never land. But, Lapid has things to answer for. Naftali Bennett has things to answer for. They all have things to answer for. And the question is, should they be in charge, and who are they going to get to replace all of this when it's done? Then the question becomes, what do we do with Gaza? What's that going to look like? So it's clear as I read the Iranian press, the Tehran Times, talking about Israel's reached the point of return. They have these things like the Zionist regime has been knocked out by the Al-Aqsa storm, and they have this constant use of imagery of the Dome of the Rock that they have. Here's a speech that Khomeini gave. Yes, they show their power, but where? In a hospital for Gazan patients, and a Gazan schools, and on the heads of the Gazan people who have nowhere to go. The show of power. This is similar to an athlete who loses in a competition and retaliates by physically attacking and verbally abusing the fans of the opposing team. In other words, there is nothing more disgraceful than what the Zionist regime has done. And we understand verbal abuse and that type of thing, and we understand defeats here in Columbus, Ohio, after what happened yesterday up in the big house in Michigan. It's a pretty good game. I don't have too many beefs about it. Plenty of opportunities to win. You can't miss field goals and that type of thing. So here's this ortho interceptions at inappropriate times that lead to points or the end of games. So here's the Iranian foreign minister in Beirut meeting with Hezbollah leader Nasrallah, and you can see this picture gives you the exact picture of who's in charge, who controls Hezbollah. This is where Nasrallah meets with people. There's the flag. And of course, there's the Ayatollah Khamenei and the Ayatollah Khomeini, the two supreme leaders that Iran has had since 1979. That's who Nasrallah listens to. So there's a lot of question about this. And this is what the headline of the meeting said: resistance will emerge victorious in Gaza war against Israel, Hezbollah chief tells Iranian foreign minister. So the question is, what's Hezbollah going to do? At the same time, you see all of this propaganda everywhere. So here's an interview that with Martin Griffiths by Christian Amanpour from CNN. I want you to listen to what he says about what has happened during the Israeli invasion of Gaza. Now listen to this. This is the UN top guy in Gaza and what he thinks. And listen to this.
So you have been, on the front line of this since the beginning, but you've also been, UN special envoy and advisor to many, many, many issues. Yemen, Syria, you've been in UNICEF, you've been doing this for a long time, head of relief operations, NGOs, the whole lot. Have you ever seen anything like this? Well, how do you assess what's happening right now in terms of humanitarian needs in Gaza?
The worst ever. Christian, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, I started off in my 20s dealing with the Khmer Rouge, and you remember how bad that was.
Yeah, a couple million people.
But 68% of the people killed in Gaza are women and children. They stopped counting the numbers of children killed after 4,500 had been counted. Nobody goes to school in Gaza. Nobody knows what their future is. Hospitals have become a place of war, not of curing. No, I don't think I've seen anything like this before. It's complete and utter carnage.
There's another man who has I would say he has a broken moral compass, but I think that's giving him too much credit, because to say that his moral compass is broken presumes that he has some morality. This is unbelievable. The worst I've ever seen. And I started with the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields. And so they say, and so here you see this is the New York Times front page. Deaths reported in Gaza, and this is the 68% number. And look down here, the source, Gazan officials. Hamas. At least they're honest where they get this, but they don't do any. What happened to the journalism part? Here's another one. Share of people killed in Gaza fighting between Israel and Hamas. Sources, UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs before 2023. Now, Gazan officials. So at least they're honest about this. And it's this claim over and over again, this is genocide. So Moshe Hashem, if you've ever been to the Jewish quarter in the old city there, the square where the menorah is, he's got a shop there. His shop is Shor Hashem. I don't think that's his last name. But anyway, Moshe, he put this on his Facebook page this morning. This is ethnic cleansing. Jewish population 1948 versus 23. Egypt went from 63,000 Jews in 48 to 3 today. Syria went from 40,000 Jews to 0. Iran, 100,000 to 8,500. Iraq, 150,000 to 4. Lebanon, 20,000 to 29. Morocco, 265,000 to 2,100. Algeria, 140,000 to 200. Libya, I'm going to go through each one, 38,000 to 0. Tunisia, 105,000 to 1,000. In Gaza, about 8,000 in 1948 to 0 today. Who's apartheid? This is the apartheid. By the way, it's genocide. If this is genocide, this is the most, I'm sorry, I don't like people dying in war. Innocent civilians, and I'm sure there are innocent civilians. What I don't like is I don't like that anybody who talks about this, Christiane Amanpour, she is a despicable human being. She has been like this forever, anti-Israel. And she could get on, she could come up here and argue that she's not that anti-Israel, but the proof is all the things that she's done, all the interviews that she does, where she never challenges these people. It's like Candace Owens interviewing Norm Finkelstein, who's one of the most anti-Jewish people on planet Earth, never challenges him. Why is that? Tucker Carlson does this too with people. Candace has Kanye West on, who denies the Holocaust. She doesn't challenge him. I don't know whether she believes it or not. But, Candace, if you're not in agreement with Kanye, at least challenge him a little bit, make an effort. It's not that hard, but she gives these people a pass. And Tucker Carlson does too, and it's very concerning. There are a lot of articles out there that you can find about this. The David Horowitz Center, they put up an article on their blog this week. It said, "Goodbye, Candace." And they were one of the ones who gave her a platform in the initial stages. And they said, we just can't have this. But so if this is genocide, look at what's happened to the Arab population in Israel. In 1948, it was 156,000. It's now 2.1 million. Boy, that's pretty effective. If you're trying to grow something. Arabs in Gaza, 80,000 in 1948 to over 2 million today. Even with the people that have been killed in this recent invasion. It's crazy. So there are a lot of players at play in the Middle East. We see a lot of the foundations of Ezekiel 38, 39 being formed, Psalm 83, This is the graphic that I've used a couple times. And you can see some of the major players. I have China over here. That's kind of a wild card. You have Israel. You have Hamas. You have Hezbollah. Syria, the Syrian king is laying on its side because it's not that effective. But he's making, there are Iranian militias that are now on the Gaza border with Israel that are Iranian controlled. So I don't know if this thing is going to take off and turn into something. I do not know. Of course, I have the Saudi Arabia king down here. Made that one a little different because that's an updated, he's building a lot of things. But look, this is a quote from an article, and I apologize, I can't remember the article that I got. I did a screenshot. But it's talking about what's happened in Syria. Meanwhile, in Syria, where violence was rife and the country in a state of armed collapse, another kind of stalemate went into effect. The regime of Bashar al-Assad, facing a ferocious threat from various groups of jihadists, survived in part by negotiating massive military support from Russia in exchange for a 25-year contract. This happened back in 2015, 2016. In exchange for a 25-year contract to develop serious claims to that Levantine gas field. Included in the deal was a major expansion of the Russian naval base at the port city of Tartus, ensuring a far larger naval presence in the Levantine basin. And so what they have looked at is the gas and oil assets in the Levantine basin. I will get to that in just a moment. But the other thing that's happening is Iran is kind of throwing its fingers into things. These are from some Houthi, Houthis in Yemen have posted this on their Telegram channels. These are, see the ships have Israel on the side. There have been a couple of merchant ships. One's been attacked by a drone. I believe one's been boarded. They're owned by Israeli billionaires. There was another one that was taken, they took control of it, but I don't think that was an Israeli citizen-owned vessel or Israeli company-owned vessel. But this is, the Houthis are doing this, and somebody's like, why don't we bomb their ports? What are we doing? Why are we just we don't have a ceasefire arrangement with Yemen. They're launching drones and cruise missiles at us all the time. Maybe we should do this. These are pictures this is a graphic from, I think I got this from the Middle East Forum. That's Daniel Pipe's group with Jonathan Spire, Dexter Van Zyl, and Dexter Van Zyl writes for them. These are the attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East. Now, you can ask the question, why do we have all these bases there? Why are we there? And that's a legitimate question. Here's some more Iranian graphics. You see this is the Ayatollah Khomeini. You can see the biblical imagery that he's using, the parting of the sea leading to the Al-Aqsa compound, to the Dome of the Rock. Here's another, this is an old graphic. Your youth will say your prayers in Al-Quds in Jerusalem. And then here's another one. We're going to Palestine will be free. This is an old graphic. And you see the pictures there of General Soleimani, who was assassinated back in 2000 or 2001 by the U.S. Now, there's a theory going around that Israel is going into Gaza for two reasons. They want to build a canal from the Red Sea, and it's going to go through Gaza, even though Gaza doesn't really have a port. And there have been plans to do this for some time, but it's never gotten anywhere. I think I debunked that last week, that right now, based on world trade, they would get maybe $4.5 billion in revenue, but the cost of the canal will be way over $100 billion. Plus, the cost of the war is going to easily exceed $100 billion. It just doesn't make sense to spend $200 billion to get $4.5 billion of revenue. And I know people, they will control the trade. At most, they'll get half of the Suez Canal traffic. And it will, by the way, it will require like 500 nuclear explosions to dig the canal. Now, in 1963, when that idea was floated, maybe you could get away with, hey, we'll blow up 500 nuclear bombs in Israel to dig a canal. Do you think that anybody would allow that to happen today? And as I said last week, even the elites, even the, I don't care what you want to call them, the Illuminati or whatever, they have accountants, right? They're not going to, it doesn't make any sense to me. I could be totally wrong. Now, the other thing, though, is they're talking about the fact that, well, they want to get the gas off of Gaza. And you'll see like Stuart Peters, Mike Adams, the health ranger, or whatever he calls his program, Natural News. Oh, Israel's just stealing Gaza's gas. It's trillions of dollars. It's not trillions of dollars. It's not even trillions of cubic feet of gas, which is the measurement, one of the measurements used. Look at this article. This is, and by the way, this comes from a place called Workers' World back in November, about 2 weeks ago. Workers' World, workers and oppressed people of the world unite. So what do you think their orientation is, right? So they're saying, well, Israel's taking Gaza's gas. I don't know that that's true. Look at what it says. And this will give you sort of an idea of their political orientation. It says, despite the fact that this reserve lies under waters bordering occupied Palestine, Lebanon, and Egypt, Israel has claimed sole access and profits from this find. This is not true. Egypt gets its gas. There's a deal with Lebanon to get its gas. In fact, they gave away gas to Lebanon. And Syria's been trying to develop gas, but nobody's fighting Syria. Syria's doing it because it's in a complete meltdown politically. They've had a civil war going on since 2011. They haven't been able to get anything done, even with the Russians' help. And then the Gazans, oh, look at this, but look at what it says. While the estimated volume of natural gas in the Gaza Marine is considerably less than the Levant Basin, its proximity to the shore and lesser depth make it easier and less costly to extract. In 2019, the UNCTAD estimated that the net value of the Gaza Marine natural gas was $4.6 billion. It's $1.4 trillion cubic feet of gas. That translates to net value after the cost of extracting it to less than $5 billion. So, Mike Adams, if you have some other proof, I'm willing to look at it and consider it. I love facts. But these people are running around saying it's trillions of dollars that Israel's trying to steal. It's not trillions of dollars. It would only supply Gaza's needs, 2 million people, for 15 years. So it's 1.4 trillion cubic feet. That's what all the documents that I've seen say it is. And so people assume, well, a trillion cubic feet of gas must be $50 a cubic foot. That'd be $75 trillion. No, that's not how you calculate the value of gas. So just stop it, okay? But so this is a problem. We've talked about this conflict. Turkey's always been in. There's this proposal that was floated a number of years ago that they do a pipeline up to Turkey where it would join with Trans-Turkey gas pipeline. There was also this East Med pipeline project that was talked about, but Amos Hochstein and others in our government put the kibosh on that, saying, well, we don't want to do hydrocarbon things anymore because of this. And that would have cost about at least $10 billion and taken 5 or 6 years. And there's not a drop of gas going that way. Hasn't been. They might be able to get some liquefied gas from some of the facilities in Egypt, but it's not even close. It's just a trickle compared to what Europe needs. So this is a graphic that I showed. This is the border dispute with Lebanon. That Israel gave up a lot of billions of dollars really worth of gas that they didn't need to give up. But Hezbollah can't do anything about it because they're focused on trying to get rid of Israel. this is a pretty good article at Brookings. I won't go into it, but this is talking about Erdogan and Turkey. Turkey's a major player in this. And the interesting title, The Sultan's Ghost, Erdogan and the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. And it talks about the fact that he's really going after Israel. He keeps bringing up things. The second paragraph there, it says, Erdogan increasingly describes the conflict in the Middle East in civilizational terms, a clash between the Crusader and the Crescent, and uses a narrative that combines Neo-Ottomanism and Islamic solidarity. He has been able to convince a sizable portion of Turkish society that the Israel-Palestinian conflict is central to Turkey's global posture and regional ambitions. And he's really going for broke. So if you want to go to Brookings, I think it's brookings.org, and you can read about this article. I think it's a pretty good article, even though I think Brookings is kind of a center-left to left organization, but this one I think got a lot of the facts correct. We could talk about Ezekiel 38, Psalm 83, not Ezekiel 38, went dyslexic there for just a moment, Psalm 83, and we'll talk about that more in the future. But this is another thing. This is some imagery from Iranian and Arab press, and you see how they view the Dome of the Rock. That's the heart of Islam. And it's not the heart of Islam. It's not only became the heart of Islam after the Jews became prominent in the land of Israel as they came back. And then this is a good graphic from an Arab newspaper showing that Iran is throwing oil on the fire. This is a video. Iran has now developed, they released this information this week, yet another hypersonic missile that they're talking about. And so remember, there was the one that said it was like 400 seconds to Jerusalem. And if you calculate that, that comes out to 6.66 minutes. I'm sure that's, all these things are just an accident of math and that type of thing. So that's being developed, that's being rolled out. A lot of this in the press, you can find the videos on this. So here's Jonathan Spire. I just want you to look at, I'm going to mention a couple things that he's doing, and then one section on the land of Israel. I mentioned Ezekiel 36 earlier. I just don't see how these end-time prophecies work out if there's not a Jewish state of Israel back in the land. Everyone says, well, it'll come about later, but there's all this other stuff that's part of it. And again, doesn't mean that everything Israel does is correct or right. Okay, but I think it's clearly their land. God is jealous for Zion. And I'm going to have longer teachings about this in the future. But here's Jonathan Spire, which I think is just a brilliant Facebook post that he put up, and I'm going to read all three paragraphs. From the outset, regarding the current Gaza war, I've argued that there are 3 campaign timetables running, and they are not in sync with one another. And Jonathan Spire, by the way, I know Jonathan, he is easily at the top of Middle East war correspondents. I mean, if not, I think he's the top. He's incredibly intelligent, articulate. Try to find him. Middle East Forum puts up webinars every now and then. You can find him on YouTube. So he said there are 3 campaign timetables running, and they are not in sync with one another. These are the military, diplomatic, political, and hostage timetables, or clocks, as they are termed in Hebrew. The first of these involves a military campaign intended to destroy Hamas governance in Gaza. This requires a lot of time. The second is a political and diplomatic campaign to extend the window of time available for Israel to complete the task. In this second area, victory can only be relative. Israel will not be afforded an infinite amount of time. That's why the military campaign needs to be conducted with single-minded speed and determination. The third timetable, that of the hostages, by definition works against the first 2. If you want to make this third timetable the imperative, then you run the very real risk of slowing down the advance on the first timetable until the second one intervenes to bring it to a halt before it reaches its goal. This, it seems to me, is what the Hamas leadership is counting on. It may well be that the nature of Israeli society is such that it isn't possible for Israeli government to act in a way other than to focus on the third timetable to the detriment of the first two. If that is so, though, it seems to me that then Israel's Islamist militia enemies and their patron in Iran have discovered a terrible vulnerability in Israel, which they will continue to work to their advantage. That's so not because I want it to be so, of course, but because of the way it is, I think. And he also had a great article in the Jerusalem Post on Friday. You can go to jpost.com and get this article, Hezbollah fighters on the Israeli-Syria border. They're sort of probing whether that front explodes into a full-blown war, and if that goes into a full-blown conflict, then it's very likely there will be a regional war to a world war over this. And you see statements being made by Putin and Xi of China talking about how they're really in favor of the Palestinians. Israel's going too far. Oh yeah, sorry about those people that died and those hostages, but get over it, man. There are other things. So this is a big deal. It's interesting the way the maps are done. So, like, for example, you'll see these maps. This comes from, I can't remember what website, but you see here they have the British Mandate Palestine. But there weren't definitive the borders. Then it was split into, this is the UN proposal. And it's interesting, you may see this a lot on Twitter and Facebook. People, look, they always say there's no Palestine. Rick Wiles says this. He pulls out an old Bible and says, so look, it says Palestine. Yeah, you know what? There's a coin that they're putting. It says Palestine, state of Palestine. But the other says it's Israel. It's Jews, the homeland of the Jews. That's what the Hebrew says on the coin. And nobody ever talks about that. So they go back to this December 1947 map that was in the National Geographic magazine. I went back and dug out the archive. And you see it says Palestine. But this was when they were discussing how they were going to split things up. So it never really... And by the way, there's other things on this map too. For example, it says Phoenicia. Does anybody use the term Phoenicia? So they're talking about a term that had been used over time, but it doesn't mean that it's set that there ever was a country called Palestine. And remember, I put up this a few weeks ago, I put up the Palestinian Museum of History. And it was just a bunch of empty rooms and blank walls. And even the article that was touting this Palestinian museum says, well, yeah, there's nothing there, but it's symbolic. I mean, that's like the classic postmodern mindset. My truth, we used to be near a hyper-charismatic organization called the Glory Barn, where we went to college in Indiana. And there was a guy running around town, and he had no finger. It was gone. But he said, I have a faith finger. My finger is there. I have a faith finger. I believe it's there. And this is kind of like, yeah, we have a Palestinian museum with nothing in it, but it's important that we believe it. By the way, in this article, it says this, Jewish pioneers transform Palestine. This is the National Geographic. I don't think the National Geographic would write this today, okay? They are heroically planting colonies in its painful emptiness. This is 1947. And leading up to this, it's painful emptiness. In most of this area, sedentary civilization has never hitherto established itself. Really. Already these pilgrims who grow trees as affirmations of their prayers have achieved miracles of transformation, and this as in other parts of Palestine. So there's a lot of that I could say about this. I want to finish. I want to play this. This is an interview this is a video that was done about the development of NEOM. Because I think this is very important in this, and is there going to be this normalization peace agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia?
It will be the new Babylon, so to speak. And if it doesn't succeed, it will be an interesting phenomenon.
Wait, let me go back. I talked over that. So,
If it succeeds, it will be the new Babylon, so to speak. And if it doesn't succeed, it will be an interesting phenomenon.
so that's what the guy said who's building this thing at NEOM, the architect. If it succeeds, it will be what? The new Babylon. So put that on your list, whether you like it or not. And it does have some of the characteristics of Babylon. And with the way the Saudis touted and push things, it sits, as they say, at the center of world trade. Now, I don't know if I'd want to live in the big hallway, but it's coming. And then a lot of people are talking about, well, we're going to do something about Geert Wilders in his speech. That was the important part of his speech when he was elected in Netherlands the other day. He said that Palestine is Jordan. That's very interesting. So this is the Trump plan for peace, and you see that it has this green area, but it would be tied to Jordan. There's a lot of proposals. You see these corridors that would tie Gaza to the area of the West Bank, and then the West Bank to Jordan. Highways, I don't know. And you see everybody running around. This is a protest in Columbus saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Oh, it's just an aspirational thing, Rashida Tlaib says. Baloney. It means get rid of Israel. Send the Jews someplace else. Send them to America. A good article at American Purpose that says, from the river to the sea, when Hamas revised its charter in 2017, it tapped into the narratives of the global left with stunning effectiveness. So you might want to look up that article, American Purpose by Jeffrey Herf, called From the River to the Sea. And he just says this is anti-Semitic. But listen, God has a different plan. And I mentioned this the other night in Zechariah chapter 9. It talks about the fact that when the Messiah comes, it's not going to be from the river to the sea. It says this, I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. The battle bow shall be cut off. He shall speak peace to the nations. His dominion shall be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. That also says that in Psalm 72, verse 8. From the river to the ends of the earth. So I have one more thing, but I'm going to save it for a midweek because I think it plays very much into how we as Christians should view this Israel thing and the expectations that are rising among the Jewish people. It's from the end of Caroline Glick's interview the other day with a Nobel Prize winner, and I will discuss that separately because I think it deserves more time than I have today. So anyway, listen, the Messiah is coming. He's coming back to Jerusalem. The nations of the earth will be gathered together against Jerusalem. Now, I'm just going to ask you, how does that happen if it's not this Jewish nation of Israel? How does Zechariah 12? How does Zechariah 14? How does this son of perdition, man of perdition, go into a temple and declare himself above all, well, into the holy place, and declare himself above all that is called God? That's a Jewish characteristic. I don't understand where people are coming from. By the way, you're entitled to your opinion. You know, I support people being wrong. I support people rooting for Michigan. Okay. You know, and they won, by the way. But listen, this is the way these things are playing out. It's all starting to come together. So let's pray, and I'll get something together midweek. I will be doing an interview live 10 p.m. Eastern, no, I'm sorry, 10 p.m., 10 a.m. Eastern on Stand Up for the Truth, Q90fm.com, and I'll post it on my Facebook and Twitter, 10 a.m. Eastern on Thursday the 30th. So I think that's all I have planned so far this week. So let's pray and let's keep all these things in mind. Lord, thank you so much for your word, for your guidance, for your gift of Bible prophecy to us so that we could make some sense of the things that are going on in the world today. Lord, I just pray that you will give us the courage, infuse us with the Holy Spirit so we can stand firm in our faith and share the gospel with those around us as time appears to be getting shorter and shorter. Bless us this week.